Yeah. So the witness blanket was, we're 10 years in to the project from the beginning, maybe longer since I first started to try to imagine a project. And it was my response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call for commemoration initiatives. And in the Indian residential school settlement agreement, survivors had put aside an amount of money to pay for commemoration. And so when the TRC put that call out, I started to think, what could I do? What could I make? And I kind of had this idea that I wanted it to be a project that told the story of the experience of survivors all across this country. So I know you can glean out of the experience of one, the experience of many, but I really wanted it to be something that would be representative of that broader story. So I quickly figured out that all of the other ways that I make things, totem carving, steel or stone sculpture, that no matter how much meaning I attempted to impart or to place into it, it was going to be pretty difficult to tell the story beyond my own experience, beyond my own father's experience and our family's experience. And it wasn't until I thought of this idea of gathering objects from residential school sites all across the country that I really felt like I was onto something. And so that was the seed of the idea, was making something out of objects gathered from residential schools. It eventually grew to include churches, governments, because they were the structures, the institutions that founded and operated residential schools. And finally, I realized that if we didn't add something of the beauty of Indigenous people and culture, and the resilience and strength of Indigenous people, then the whole thing would be doing a disservice, and would be focusing solely on the trauma. Now, that's how I decided to include contemporary structures, contemporary cultural structures. And the idea was to kind of show that whole continuum of what residential schools were intended to target, who operated them, and maybe to show in which ways they were successful, but also to show in which ways Indigenous people were able to persevere through that. What the Witness Blanket is now is a collection of, we gathered over 880 objects and constructed them into a tapestry, a blanket that's 40 feet long and 10.5 feet tall. And on each of the little pieces of the blanket, there are objects gathered, these objects that we gathered together. And while we were gathering, we were also gathering the pieces, we were also gathering stories. And so this book, or these books, came out of one of the editors from Orca was at an event that I was doing for the Witness Blanket out at Royal Roads University, and she said afterwards, "Have you ever thought of writing a book?" And my response was, "Well, yeah, but I think it's something that I'll do like at the end of my life, like as a reflective thing." And she said, "I really want you to think about the possibility of doing something sooner, like now, because I think that there's a lot of important stories to be told." And so that's where it began. She pitched the idea to the team at Orca, and when they decided they wanted to do it, I recognized right away that I wasn't going to have the capacity or ability to do it on my own. And so I identified from the beginning that I would want to work with a co-author and somebody who had, experience telling stories. And it was actually Elaine, my wife, who said, "Hey, you should ask Kirstie." And because we were friends, our kids we're going to the same kindergarten, and Kirstie was thinking about a career change, and it just really timed out well for me to ask, right? And yeah, we've spent, like, as you say, the last We spent quite a bit of time on the first book, and then a little bit less time, but still a fair amount of time on the second one. And we wanted to I guess, bring out more of the stories behind the objects that are on the witness blanket.